As a passenger in a motor vehicle, what are your rights during a traffic stop? Are you required to show your ID if you aren't driving? And do passengers have to step out of the motor vehicle whenever they are asked to do so by the cops? Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thanks for tuning in as per usual. Now in today's video I will be covering what your rights are as a passenger during a traffic stop. I will also be covering whether or not passengers have to show their IDs whenever they are requested to do so by police officers, and also how lawful is it for a cop to ask passengers to step outside of the motor vehicle during a traffic stop. Now, citizens of Jamaica and every person who is in Jamaica lawfully has the constitutionally protected right to travel freely without interference of the government or law enforcement officers. It is a fundamental right bestowed upon all of us, you and I, right? But bear in mind that although we have rights, none of these rights are absolute, but they are legally protected. Now, just about everyone who operates a motor vehicle or is a passenger in one has been or will be stopped by the police at some point in time. And police officers conducting a stop must have reasonable, suspicion that a crime or a violation has occurred, is occurring at the moment, or is about to occur. Now, what constitutes a reasonable suspicion? A reasonable suspicion is anything out of the ordinary or anything that goes against the law, right? It can just be someone's erratic driving or a violation of traffic laws, such as speeding or swerving in and out of your lane. At that point, the police can pull over the motor vehicle. The police can also pull over a motor vehicle based on information that they receive that one or more of the occupants are suspects in a crime. The point I'm trying to make here is that there must be reasonable cause to search a motor vehicle and the occupants. Now, a reasonable cause can stem from something they see, or it could be from the behavior of the driver or the passengers. So let's say they are nervous, right? So if the occupants are acting in that manner, it arouses the suspicion of the officers. Then the officers will now have a reasonable cause to believe there might be something in the vehicle or on the persons of the passengers, and so this will now satisfy them and they will have a reasonable cause to do the search. Now let's talk about when police officers can order passengers out of the motor vehicle in a traffic stop. The police can almost always order all occupants out of the motor vehicle. The reason behind this is for the officers' own protection. It is for their safety, right? If the police is searching the driver or talking to the driver or the passengers, he or she wants to be able to know that they won't have a gun pulled at them, right, by any of the passengers. So ordering everyone out of the vehicle where they can observe them more closely is best case scenario, which leads to the question, can passengers be detained during a traffic stop? The short answer is yes. Allowing a passenger to wander freely about poses a risk to the police officers by splitting their attention between two or more individuals. And that can enable the driver or passenger to take advantage of a distracted police officer, right, resulting in serious injury or death to these officers. So it is important that police officers have control of the movement of the driver and all the occupants. This is why police officers will instruct persons to stand at a designated area until they complete the traffic stop. The need for officer safety and the ability to accurately exercise control over the occupants at a traffic stop far outweighs the short period of time the passenger's freedom of movement will be curtailed, right? Okay, so the police can order passengers out of the vehicle and they can be detained as well. But Do passengers have to step out of the vehicle whenever they are asked to do so? The answer is also yes. Police officers have the authority to control the movement of passengers during a traffic stop until that traffic stop is completed. Now, here are 4 things that officers can do during a traffic stop. They can tell a passenger to remain inside of the motor vehicle. They can order a passenger to step out of the motor vehicle. They can order the passenger back inside of the motor vehicle. And they can also stop a passenger from leaving, right? From leaving before the traffic stop is completed. Now let's look at your rights as a passenger. Passengers in a motor vehicle possesses the same rights as the driver. These rights include the right to be free from unreasonable searches, the right to remain silent, and the right to a lawyer. If you believe that the stop was unreasonable, then you have the right to challenge the legality of that stop in court. You also have the right to challenge the legality of any search that was conducted after the stop in court, right? Those are your basic rights if you are a passenger in a traffic stop. Those are the same rights that the driver have as well. With all that said, we now ask the question: are passengers required to identify themselves upon the request by the police? The short answer is no. During a traffic stop in which the violation involves driver only, passengers are not required to identify themselves. It is okay for the officer to ask. Yeah man, they can ask, but they can't compel or make the passengers identify themselves. However, if the officers have a reasonable suspicion that a passenger had committed or is committing or is about to commit a crime, then that passenger is required to identify themselves upon request. And this goes for anyone. You see, as long as you are the subject of an ongoing investigation, you are required to identify yourself. So even though police officers can question anyone at any time, there is nothing in law to state that a person must identify themselves to the police unless there is reasonable cause for the officer to request an ID. Then passengers has the right to refuse to show an ID to the officers. But you know, we always say that we don't want to escalate a situation, and so if you refuse to show your ID, this might lead to probable cause for a search. And you know, if you don't have anything to hide, there is no reason not to show your ID. You don't want to escalate a situation, and you always want to be polite with an officer, right? But as I said before, you can deny the request to show your ID if you are not the subject of an ongoing investigation. Again, the police doesn't have the authority to arbitrarily detain a passenger in a motor vehicle and ask them for their ID without having reasonable ground to do so. So now you may be wondering, how will you know if you are the subject of an ongoing investigation or not, so that you can make an informed decision whether or not to identify yourself? The best way to do this is to ask the officer, "Officer, am I under investigation, or am I being investigated for a crime?" If the answer is no, then you are not required to identify yourself. However, this is not the same for drivers of a motor vehicle. Under the Road Traffic Act, the driver of any motor vehicle must produce their driver's license upon request of an officer. If not, they can be charged for the offense of failing to produce their driver's license when requested, right? I hope this was helpful. If you have any question, please leave it in the comment section below. Either way, that's been it for me today, guys. Like the video if you did. Catch you in the next one. Until next time, blessings.